With an election around the corner, the federal government is playing to its strengths, releasing its latest set of economic forecasts. A lift in commodity prices has helped deliver slightly lower deficits and higher surpluses than predicted just 2 months ago in the federal budget. The numbers also reveal that the government has taken a massive $7.5 billion hit through its watering down of the mining tax proposal. Here's Philip Lasker.
The mining tax architect was out and about, but he was not about to be caught out, drawing attention to himself on a day the government sought the spotlight. Treasury Secretary Ken Henry was content to go over some old ground, the huge increase in Australia's terms of trade.
And in Australia's case, as you know, in recent years there's been a very large increase in our terms of trade, and that has had the effect of having nominal gross domestic product grow at a faster rate than real gross domestic product. And that provides a bit of a bonus for governments facing fiscal sustainability challenges.
And a bit of a bonus for governments facing election challenges as well. That's how the market saw it.
I think the primary driver for this is the government setting itself up to announce an election soon.
They've also got a bit of backwash from the resource rent tax changes that they needed to get out, and so they've bundled all that up into a package and released it today.
The package included economic growth, which was shaved over the next 2 years by 0.25%, an unchanged unemployment forecast, which dropped below 5%, and slightly higher inflation.
We've got to decide whether we think this is kind of systematically optimistic, and I would say that, as usual, the Treasury has a track record of being systematically pessimistic. So the surprises are more likely to be on the upside than the downside.
The resources boom was seen as a help to the deficit reduction effort. The deficit forecasts were slightly lower than those in the May budget, and the surplus, when it arrives, will be slightly bigger. But the government paid a heavy price to silence the miners. The new resources tax will raise $7.5 billion less than the $12 billion forecast for the original proposal. But the pain has been eased by a $6 billion gain from higher commodity prices reflected in an improved terms of trade.
I don't disagree with the fact that the terms of trade is likely to continue rising and indeed surpass its 2008 peak. But there's still some question marks over the actual commodity price forecasts that we use to actually help generate the revenue assumptions in here to give the particular numbers across the deficit and net debt figures going forward. We just don't have that information. There's a lot here that's been put into the subject of parameter variation and just left there as a footnote rather than more detailed and explained.
While the lack of detail makes some people nervous, they also take comfort in Treasury's conservative forecasting bent.
I certainly think the conservative growth estimate for the 2010-11 fiscal year allows the government to actually receive a higher GDP growth estimate and then actually say and credit themselves with the very solid economic management. It seems to be the case that we have more conservative than otherwise GDP estimates coming forward from Treasury. So I think they've kept that one in the back pocket for potentially after the election and going forward. And also I think the fact that the deficit estimate for the 2010-11 financial year still is probably a little bit conservative, gives them some wiggle room as well should they choose to actually increase expenditure going into the election campaign.
Stand by for the proverbial rabbit out of a hat.